The howling winds of Polaris 9 clawed at the reinforced walls of Research Station Epsilon like a hungry beast. Inside, Dr. Tessa Winters rubbed her temples as she reviewed the latest atmospheric readings. 3 years on this frozen rock had hardened her to its moods, but tonight's storm was something special, a Category 5 blizzard with temperatures dropping to -70 degrees Celsius. Station integrity at 92%, announced Helm, the station's AI. I recommend restricting movement to central corridors until the storm passes. Noted, Tessa muttered, her breath visible despite the heating systems working overtime. As the station's lead xenobiologist, she'd volunteered for this assignment to study Polaris 9's unique extremophile bacteria. What she hadn't counted on was the soul-crushing isolation. The communication panel chimed. Dr. Winters, called Director Vaughn's voice, we've detected an anomaly 10 kilometers south of the station. Possibly a ship in distress. Tessa frowned. In this storm? That's suicide. The signature is non-human. Possibly Cryosian. Her heart skipped. The Cryosians, a newly contacted humanoid species with an advanced civilization, had been reluctant to engage with Earth's diplomatic overtures. Their appearance here, now, couldn't be coincidence. I'm sending the coordinates to your rover, Vaughn continued. We need to make a good impression. You want me to go out there? Now. Tessa glanced at the whiteout conditions on the external cameras. You're our best option, Winters. You've survived worse conditions during your field research. 30 minutes later, Tessa guided the reinforced rover through the blinding snow, the vehicle's navigation system barely able to keep track of her position as hurricane-force winds buffeted the chassis. The rover's headlights cut through the swirling white, revealing nothing but endless drifts of ice. Come on, she muttered, squinting at the scanner. Where are you? As if in answer, a red flash lit up the sky ahead, an emergency flare. Tessa gunned the engine, pushing the rover toward the signal. The lights revealed a sleek silver craft, its hull design unlike anything human-made, partially buried in the snow. A jagged crack ran along its side. Tessa pulled as close as she dared and suited up, securing her helmet and activating her suit's heating system. Helm, maintain rover life support and be ready for emergency departure. Acknowledged, Dr. Winters. External temperature now at -73 Celsius. You have 20 minutes before suit power reaches critical. The moment she stepped outside, the wind nearly knocked her off her feet. She trudged through snow that reached her knees, the flare's red glow her only guide. As she approached the craft, she noticed the entry hatch was partially open, snow already accumulating inside. Hello, she called over her suit's external speaker. This is Dr. Tessa Winters from Earth Research Station Epsilon. Do you need assistance? No response. Tessa reached the hatch and pulled herself up, peering into the darkened interior. Her helmet light swept across the cabin, revealing sophisticated technology and finally coming to rest on a figure slumped in the pilot's seat. The Cryosian was humanoid but distinctly alien, tall and lithe with skin the color of burnished copper that seemed to shimmer with an internal light. Delicate ridge patterns adorned the temples and jawline. What struck Tessa most were the eyes, large, with vertical pupils like a cat's, colored a startling azure blue. And they were looking right at her. Stay back, human, the Cryosian said in accented but perfect English, one hand raising a small device that might have been a weapon. Your ship is damaged, Tessa replied calmly, staying in the hatchway. This storm will only get worse. You'll freeze to death before anyone else finds you. The Cryosian's eyes narrowed. Your kind has a saying, better the devil you know. And you clearly don't know humans very well if you'd rather die than accept help. Tessa glanced at her suit readings. I have 16 minutes before my suit fails. Make your decision. For several tense seconds, the Cryosian studied her. Then, a violent shiver racked the alien's slender frame, and the hand holding the device trembled. I am Navar, diplomatic envoy of the Cryosian Collective, he finally said, lowering the device. And it seems I have little choice. Getting Navar to the rover proved challenging. Though he tried to hide it, he was clearly injured, one leg dragged slightly, and he clutched his side where a dark fluid that wasn't quite blood seeped through his iridescent garments. The biting cold didn't help, cutting through his thin diplomatic attire which offered little protection against Polaris 9's harsh environment. Halfway to the rover, Navar stumbled, nearly falling face-first into the snow. Without hesitation, Tessa caught him, supporting his weight against her side. "I don't need your pity," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Good, because I'm not offering any," Tessa shot back. "What I'm offering is survival. Now move." By the time they reached the rover, Navar's copper skin had taken on a bluish tinge, and his breathing had grown labored. Tessa helped him into the passenger seat and cranked the heating to maximum. "Helm, run diagnostic scan on our guest." "Scanning," the AI responded. "Subject appears to be suffering from hypothermia and has sustained lacerations to the lower torso. Detecting unusual physiological responses to cold, subject's core temperature dropping rapidly despite ambient warming." Navar's eyes had begun to close, his head lolling to one side. "Hey!" Tessa snapped her fingers in front of his face. "Stay awake. Talk to me. What were you doing out here alone?" "Secret mission," he murmured. "Studying humans, without bias of official channels." "You crashed on the most inhospitable planet humans inhabit to study us?" Tessa couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice as she programmed the rover for return to base. "Your species, reputation precedes you." Navar's voice was growing fainter. "Cold, calculating, dangerous. And yet here I am, saving your life," Tessa pointed out, checking his pulse. It was alarmingly weak. Despite the rover's heat, Navar continued to shiver violently. "Helm, estimated time to base." 43 minutes at current speed and conditions, Dr. Winters." Tessa glanced at Navar. He wouldn't last that long. Making a quick decision, she reached behind her seat and pulled out her emergency thermal blanket. "This won't be enough," she muttered, seeing how the alien's shivering only intensified. With a sigh, she unzipped her outer suit and moved to Navar's side of the vehicle. "What are you doing?" he asked weakly. "Saving your life, apparently." She wrapped the thermal blanket around both of them, pressing her body against his side. Human body heat. The universe's most reliable power source. For a moment, Navar tensed at the contact. Then, almost imperceptibly, he leaned into her warmth. "Your kind, they said humans were too cold-hearted," he whispered, his azure eyes finding hers. "Cold in spirit as the void between stars." Tessa gave a short laugh. "We can be. But we can also be this, stubborn enough to walk into a blizzard for a stranger, foolish enough to risk our lives for someone who points a weapon at us." As the rover trudged back toward the station, something unexpected happened. Where their bodies met, Tessa felt a strange tingling sensation, almost electrical. Navar felt it too, his eyes widened slightly. "What is that?" she asked. "Resonance," he replied softly. "My people, we exchange energy when in close contact. It is unexpected that it would happen with a human." The tingling intensified, spreading warmth through Tessa's body despite the cold that had seeped into the rover. She found herself studying Navar's features, the elegant ridges along his cheekbones, the subtle patterns that seemed to shift beneath his copper skin, the depth in those alien eyes. "Your mission," she said after a long moment. "To study humans without bias. How's that working out for you so far?" A ghost of a smile touched Navar's lips. "The data is contradictory." By the time the rover reached Research Station Epsilon, Navar's condition had stabilized. As Tessa helped him through the airlock, supporting his weight against her side, she couldn't help but notice how the station staff stared. Most had never seen a cryogen in person. Director Vaughn approached, his expression a mixture of surprise and calculation. "Dr. Winters, I see your rescue mission was successful." "This is Navar," diplomatic envoy from the Cryosian Collective, Tessa said formally. He needs medical attention. Of course, Vaughn nodded, gesturing to the medical team standing by. We'll take good care of our unexpected guest. As the medical staff led Navar away, he turned back to meet Tessa's eyes one last time. They said humans were too cold-hearted, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she shared her blanket with me. His gaze held hers for a moment longer. Perhaps there is more to learn about your species than our archives suggest. Tessa watched him disappear down the corridor, the ghost of that electrical tingling still dancing across her skin. She had a feeling their story was just beginning, a human scientist and an alien diplomat, finding unexpected warmth on the coldest planet in human space. Director Vaughn stepped to her side. This could be a diplomatic breakthrough, Winters. The Cryosians have been refusing our overtures for years. Tessa nodded absently, her mind still on the sensation of Navar's body against hers, the strange connection that had formed between them. I believe, she said slowly, that we've all been too cold for far too long. Outside, the blizzard continued to rage, but inside Tessa felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in her 3 years on this frozen world, the warmth of connection, of possibility, of barriers beginning to thaw. 3 days after his rescue, Navar stood at the observation window of Research Station Epsilon's medical bay, watching the endless expanse of white beyond the reinforced glass. The blizzard had finally subsided, leaving behind a pristine landscape sculpted by wind and ice. His reflection showed the copper sheen returning to his skin, a sign of recovery that Dr. Holloway, the station's physician, had noted with professional satisfaction. The soft hiss of the automatic door announced a visitor. Navar didn't need to turn to know who it was, he could sense her unique energy signature before she spoke. The medical staff says you're healing remarkably fast, Tessa said, coming to stand beside him at the window. Cryosians evolved on a planet with extreme temperature fluctuations, Navar replied. Our bodies adapt quickly when necessary. What he didn't mention was how that adaptation had been accelerated by their contact in the rover. The resonance that had sparked between them had jump-started his body's natural healing mechanisms in ways he still didn't fully understand. Director Vaughn wants to speak with you, Tessa said after a moment of comfortable silence. Something about establishing official diplomatic channels while you're here. Navar turned to face her. In the artificial light of the station, her features seemed softer than they had in the harsh environment outside, warm brown eyes that held intelligence and curiosity, dark hair pulled back in a practical style, skin the color of the earth in Cryosian temple gardens. And what do you want, Dr. Winters? He asked. A small smile played at her lips. Scientifically speaking, I have about 1,000 questions about Cryosian physiology and culture. Only 1,000? I'm disappointed, he replied, surprising himself with the ease of their banter. Tessa's smile widened. I'm pacing myself. But first, she held up a bundle of fabric. I thought you might want something more suitable than medical scrubs. We adapted some of our cold weather gear to your measurements. The clothing she offered was clearly Earth-made but modified to accommodate his taller, slimmer frame. The fabric felt different from Cryosian textiles, heavier, more substantial, designed for function over form. Thank you, he said, accepting the bundle. Their fingers brushed briefly, and that now familiar resonance tingled between them, subtle but unmistakable. Tessa's eyes widened slightly. It's happening again. Yes, Navar confirmed, not pulling away. It's unusual. Resonance typically only occurs between Cryosians with compatible energy patterns. And what does that mean? Tessa asked, scientific curiosity evident in her tone. Before he could answer, the station's lighting flickered ominously, then dimmed to emergency levels. A moment later, Helm's voice came over the communication system. Attention all personnel. Primary power generator malfunction detected. Switching to auxiliary power. All non-essential systems will be temporarily disabled. Tessa frowned. That's not good. The auxiliary generators aren't designed to handle extended operation in these temperatures. As if on cue, Director Vaughn's voice followed, all department heads report to the command center immediately. I have to go, Tessa said, already moving toward the door. She paused, looking back at Navar. Will you be all right here? I believe I'd be more useful helping assess the situation, he replied. My people have considerable experience with extreme environment power systems. Tessa hesitated only briefly before nodding. Come on, then. The command center buzzed with controlled urgency when they arrived. Director Vaughn, a tall, austere man with graying hair and a perpetual look of calculation, stood at the central console with Chief Engineer Dalton, reviewing system diagnostics. Primary cooling system for the reactor core has failed, Dalton was explaining, her fingers flying over the control panel. Backup systems are engaged but struggling with the load. We've got maybe 12 hours before we face a critical situation. Vaughn noticed Tessa and Navar's arrival, his eyes narrowing slightly at the sight of the cryogen. Dr. Winters, I don't recall authorizing our guest access to the command center. Navar has experience with extreme environment power systems, Tessa said. He offered to help. Did he now? Vaughn's gaze shifted to Navar, assessing. And what exactly would you know about Earth technology, Envoy Navar? The principles of thermodynamics are universal, Director, Navar replied calmly. May I? He gestured to the diagnostic display. After a moment's hesitation, Vaughn stepped aside. Navar studied the readouts, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Your coolant system uses a nitrogen-based compound, he observed. Efficient under normal circumstances, but prone to crystallization at extreme temperatures. That's exactly what's happening, Dalton confirmed, surprised. The exterior coolant lines are freezing faster than the heating elements can prevent it. On cryos, we use a silicate-based coolant with a much lower freezing point, Navar said. I could synthesize a similar compound using materials from my ship, if it could be retrieved. All eyes turned to Tessa, who had more experience navigating Polaris 9's treacherous surface than anyone else at the station. I can take the rover back to the crash site, she said without hesitation. It's too dangerous, Vaughn objected. The storm may have subsided, but temperatures are still lethal. Which is why I should accompany her, Navar interjected. I know exactly what we're looking for, and 2 survival chances are better than 1. Tessa met his gaze, that invisible current flowing between them once more. This time, it felt like understanding, like trust. Fine, Vaughn conceded after a tense silence. But you have 8 hours. After that, we'll need to implement emergency protocols. An hour later, Tessa and Navar were back in the rover, crossing the frozen wasteland toward the crashed cryogen vessel. The landscape had been transformed by the blizzard. What had once been open terrain was now a maze of snow drifts and ice formations. Your director doesn't trust me, Navar observed as Tessa navigated around a particularly treacherous ice ridge. Vaughn doesn't trust anyone, she replied. Especially not the first cryogen to make direct contact with our outpost under unusual circumstances. You trust me, Navar said. It wasn't a question. Tessa glanced at him. Should I not? I haven't decided yet. He smiled slightly, the expression transforming his alien features into something almost familiar. My mission was unauthorized. A personal initiative to study humans directly, away from the political theater of official diplomatic channels. So you're a rogue diplomat? Tessa couldn't help but smile. That's a new one. Our council believes humans are dangerous, aggressive expansionists with no regard for other sentient species, Navar explained, his expression growing serious. I wanted to see for myself. And what have you seen so far? Contradictions, he admitted. Kindness where I expected callousness. Warmth where I expected cold calculation. They lapsed into silence as the rover crested a hill, revealing the crash site below. The sleek cryogen vessel looked even more alien against the stark white landscape, its silver hull partially buried in snow. That's odd, Tessa murmured, studying the scanner. I'm picking up heat signatures. The ship's emergency system should have shut down completely by now, Navar said, suddenly alert. Someone has reactivated them. They approached cautiously, parking the rover at a distance. Through the view screen, they could see that someone had cleared the snow around the entry hatch. Could another cryosian have followed you? Tessa asked, checking her sidearm, standard issue for outpost personnel, rarely needed until now. Possible, but unlikely, Navar replied, his expression grim. More concerning would be if your people found it first. My people? The nearest human settlement besides our research station is on the other side of the planet. I wasn't referring to civilians. The implication hung between them as they suited up for the short trek to the ship. The temperature outside had risen slightly, a balmy -45°C, but still lethal within minutes of exposure. As they approached the vessel, Navar suddenly pulled Tessa behind an ice formation. Seconds later, two figures emerged from the ship's hatch, humans in unmarked black cold-weather gear, carrying equipment cases. Earth military intelligence, Tessa whispered, recognizing the design of their gear. What are they doing here? Taking what isn't theirs, it appears, Navar replied, his voice tight. The resonance crystal they're carrying powers my ship's communication array. Without it, we can't synthesize the coolant compound for your station. Tessa weighed their options quickly. We're outnumbered and they're armed. Not just outnumbered, Navar said grimly. If those are who I think they are, they're Blackwatch, your government's shadow operatives who specialize in acquiring alien technology. How do you know about Blackwatch? Tessa asked, startled. As I said, our council has reasons for their distrust. Navar's eyes never left the operatives as they loaded their stolen goods into a sleek black vehicle nearly invisible against the landscape. We need a distraction. Before Tessa could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumbling sound grew rapidly, and suddenly the ice behind the Blackwatch operatives fractured, a massive fissure opening in the frozen ground. Ice quake! Tessa shouted, grabbing Navar's arm. This whole area could collapse. The Blackwatch agents scrambled for their vehicle as more cracks spiderwebbed across the ice. One agent stumbled, the resonance crystal container slipping from his grasp and sliding toward the widening fissure. Without hesitation, Navar broke cover, sprinting across the ice toward the container. Tessa was only steps behind him, her heart pounding as the ground continued to shake beneath them. One of the agents noticed their approach and raised a weapon. Tessa drew her sidearm in response, but before either could fire, another violent tremor knocked them all off balance. The fissure widened hungrily, swallowing snow, ice, and nearly taking the agent with it. In the chaos, Navar reached the crystal container, snatching it from the edge of the abyss. He turned to run back toward Tessa just as a section of ice collapsed beneath his feet. In an instant, he was hanging by one hand from the edge of the fissure, the container clutched in his other hand. Navar! Tessa screamed, diving for him. She caught his wrist just as his grip failed, the sudden weight nearly pulling her into the chasm with him. Behind her, she heard the Blackwatch vehicle's engines roar to life as the agents made their escape. Let go of the container, she shouted over the rumbling ice. I can't pull you up. We need it, Navar called back, his eyes meeting hers with unwavering intensity. Your people will die without it. And I'm not letting you die for a piece of technology. Tessa braced herself against the ice, straining to maintain her grip on his wrist. Let it go, Navar. That's an order. For a breathless moment, she thought he would refuse. Then, with a look that pierced her to her core, he released the container. It disappeared into the darkness below, and with both hands free, Tessa was able to haul him back onto solid ground. They lay side by side on the ice, breathing heavily as the quake finally subsided, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Why? Navar asked after a long moment. That crystal could have saved your station, your people. Tessa turned to face him, their faces inches apart. Because some things are worth more than technology. The resonance between them surged, stronger than before, a current of energy that seemed to flow from her to him and back again. Navar's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "We'll find another way," she said with determination. "There has to be another solution." Navar studied her face as if seeing something new there, something unexpected and precious. "Perhaps there is. My ship's auxiliary systems contain smaller resonance crystals. Not as powerful, but they might be sufficient to synthesize enough coolant for a temporary repair." Hope rekindled, they made their way carefully to the ship. Inside, the interior was in disarray, panels torn open, equipment scattered where the Blackwatch agents had ransacked it for technology. They were thorough, Navar observed grimly, moving to a seemingly intact wall panel. He pressed his palm against it, and the panel slid aside, revealing a hidden compartment. But not thorough enough. Inside lay several smaller crystals, each glowing with an inner blue light. Navar carefully extracted them, placing them in a protective case from his belt. "Will it be enough?" Tessa asked. "It will have to be," he replied, securing the case. "But we'll need to work quickly." They were halfway back to the rover when Tessa's communicator crackled to life. Director Vaughn's voice came through, distorted but urgent. "Winters. Do you copy? The situation has deteriorated. Auxiliary power failing. Temperature in the living quarters dropping rapidly. Whatever you're planning to bring back, make it fast. We have less than 4 hours before critical systems fail." Tessa and Navar exchanged a look of grim determination. As they raced back to the rover, the first flakes of a new snowstorm began to fall, gentle now, but promising another blizzard to come. "I need to know something," Tessa said as they secured themselves in the vehicle. "When you said the resonance between us was unusual, that it only happens between compatible cryosians, what exactly does that mean?" Navar's azure eyes held hers for a long moment before he answered. "Among my people, it signifies a rare compatibility of life energy, what some of your cultures might call souls." His voice softened. "It is the foundation of our deepest bonds." "You mean like?" "Yes," he said simply. "Like that." The implications hung between them as Tessa started the rover's engine. As they drove back toward the station, racing against time and the brewing storm, the resonance between them continued to pulse, a warm, living connection bridging the space between their worlds. Behind them, the black Blackwatch vehicle emerged from hiding, following at a discreet distance. Inside, an agent spoke into a secure communicator. "Target is returning to the research station with the alien. Proceed with extraction protocol." The storm closed in around them, obscuring the pursuit and the station ahead, but not the growing certainty that whatever lay between human and Cryosian, it was something neither of their worlds was prepared for. The blizzard chased them all the way back to Research Station Epsilon, visibility dropping to near zero in the final kilometers. Tessa navigated purely by the rover's instruments, her knuckles white on the controls as she pushed the vehicle to its limits. Beside her, Navar clutched the case containing the resonance crystals, his copper skin glowing faintly in the dimmed cabin light. "We're not going to make it," Tessa muttered as another gust of wind rocked the rover. "Not in these conditions." "We will," Navar said with unexpected certainty. He placed his free hand over hers on the control stick, and immediately that now familiar resonance flared between them, stronger, more focused than before. "Let me help." To Tessa's astonishment, the rover's navigation display suddenly sharpened, cutting through the interference from the storm. The path back to the station appeared with crystal clarity, as if the blizzard itself was parting before them. "How?" "The resonance," Navar explained, his voice strained with concentration. "It enhances perception, among other things. I can help you see through the storm, but only while we maintain contact." Their joined hands guided the rover through the whiteout, finding passages where none seemed to exist. When the station's emergency lights finally appeared through the swirling snow, Tessa let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We made it," she whispered. Then, with a sideways glance at Navar, "We need to have a serious talk about these abilities of yours. If we survive the next few hours, he agreed, I promise to answer all your questions. The station's main hangar was in chaos when they arrived, emergency lighting bathed everything in an eerie red glow, and the air already carried the biting chill of failing environmental systems. Director Vaughn and Chief Engineer Dalton rushed to meet them as they disembarked. Systems are failing faster than predicted, Dalton reported, her breath visibly clouding. Core temperature in the living quarters is down to 10 degrees Celsius and dropping. Did you find what we need? Vaughn demanded, eyeing the case in Navar's hands. Yes, Navar answered, but implementing the solution will be challenging. We need to synthesize the coolant and integrate it into your systems quickly. The main lab still has power, Dalton said. I've prepped everything according to the specifications you sent ahead. As they hurried through the corridors, Tessa noticed the station personnel casting curious, sometimes suspicious glances at Navar. News of the Cryosian's presence had spread, as had rumors about the nature of his crash landing. Some seemed grateful for his help, others regarded him with open distrust. In the lab, Navar worked with focused intensity, manipulating the resonance crystals with practiced hands. The smaller crystals lacked the power of the main one lost in the crevasse, but he seemed confident they would suffice. The process requires precise energy modulation, he explained as he set up the equipment. On Krios, we would use specialized tools for this, but we'll have to improvise. What do you need? Tessa asked, already moving to gather supplies. Navar hesitated, then met her eyes. You. The resonance between us, I can channel it through the crystals to catalyze the reaction. Vaughn frowned. What exactly are you suggesting? A temporary energy bond, Navar replied. Dr. Winters and I have discovered we share a unique compatibility. It's rare even among my people, but it might be the key to making this work. And the risks? Tessa asked quietly. Navar's azure eyes held hers steadily. Unknown. This has never been attempted between our species. A tense silence filled the lab, broken only by the distant rumble of the storm and the occasional alarm from failing systems. Finally, Tessa stepped forward. We don't have time for another solution, she said firmly. Let's do it. Despite Vaughn's protests, preparations moved quickly. Dalton connected the synthesizing equipment to the station's coolant system while Navar arranged the resonance crystals in a precise pattern. Within 30 minutes, everything was ready. The moment the synthesis begins, you'll need to redirect the coolant flow to the primary generators, Navar instructed Dalton. The window for integration will be brief. Understood, the engineer replied, taking position at the control panel. Navar turned to Tessa, extending his hands. Are you ready? She nodded, placing her palms against his. Immediately, the resonance surged between them, no longer just a tingling but a wave of energy that made the air around their joined hands shimmer visibly. Remember, Navar said softly, whatever happens, don't break contact until the process is complete. Their eyes locked, and Tessa felt something new pass between them, not just energy, but emotion, raw and powerful. Then Navar began to chant in his native language, the musical syllables flowing like water. The resonance crystals responded, pulsing with blue light that grew steadily brighter. The energy between their hands intensified, spreading up their arms and throughout their bodies. Tessa gasped as foreign sensations flooded her consciousness, memories not her own, emotions she'd never experienced, knowledge of stars and worlds she'd never seen. She was seeing through Navar's eyes, feeling with his heart, experiencing his reality. And he was experiencing hers. The crystals now blazed with brilliance, bathing the lab in sapphire light. In the synthesizing chamber, a silvery liquid began to form, flowing through the connected pipes toward the station's cooling system. It's working. Dalton called out, her fingers flying over the controls. Coolant integration at 20%, 40%. The resonance had become almost painful in its intensity, but Tessa held on, gritting her teeth against the overwhelming sensations. Through the connection, she felt Navar's strain as well, his life energy pouring into the process. 60%, 80%. The lab door burst open. Through the haze of blue light and shared consciousness, Tessa saw black-clad figures entering, the same Blackwatch operatives from the crash site. They moved with military precision, weapons raised. "Step away from the alien," one commanded, aiming at Navar. "No!" Tessa shouted, maintaining her grip on Navar's hands. "We can't stop the process." Coolant integration at 90%, Dalton reported, positioning herself protectively near the controls. "This is a classified military operation," the lead operative said, advancing. "That alien and its technology are property of Earth Government's Special Projects Division." "He's not property," Tessa spat, the resonance between her and Navar flaring with shared indignation. "He's a diplomatic envoy, and what you're doing violates at least 12 interstellar treaties." "Final integration stage," Dalton called. "Almost there." The lead operative raised his weapon. "Last warning. Step away now." Director Vaughn suddenly moved between the operatives and the linked pair. "Stand down. This is my station, and I did not authorize your presence here." "Your authority has been superseded, Director," the operative replied coldly. "The alien represents a technological goldmine that could advance our species by centuries." 100% integration. Dalton announced triumphantly. "Primary systems coming back online." The lights flickered, then stabilized as the station's generators resumed normal function. Ambient temperature, which had dropped dangerously low, began to rise. But the resonance between Tessa and Navar didn't diminish. If anything, it intensified, the blue glow enveloping them completely, creating a barrier that the Blackwatch operatives hesitated to breach. Within that shared consciousness, Tessa and Navar communicated without words. She felt his fear, not for himself, but for her, for what his presence had brought to her doorstep. She felt his regret that his mission had gone so wrong, and beneath it all, the growing warmth of something that transcended both their species' understanding of attraction. "This is bigger than either of us," Navar's voice resonated in her mind. "Then we'll face it together," she replied in the same way. The lead operative, seeing their continued defiance, gave a curt nod to his team. They raised their weapons in unison, preparing to fire. At that moment, the station's communications system crackled to life, and a new voice filled the lab, authoritative, female, and unmistakably Cryosian. "Attention Research Station Epsilon. This is First Emissary Valera of the Cryosian Diplomatic Fleet. We have your station surrounded. Any hostile action against Envoy Navar will be considered an act of war against the Cryosian Collective." The Blackwatch operatives froze, uncertain. Through the resonance, Tessa felt Navar's surprise, and his recognition of the voice. "That's impossible," he whispered aloud. "The Council wouldn't send a fleet for me." The communication continued. "Director Vaughn, please be advised that 8 Cryosian warships are currently in position around your planet. We request immediate confirmation of Envoy Navar's safety and the cessation of all hostile actions by Earth military personnel." The lead operative touched his communications device, listening to instructions from his superiors. After a tense moment, he lowered his weapon, signaling his team to do the same. "This isn't over," he said grimly, backing toward the door. "Some opportunities are too valuable to abandon. And some principles are too important to compromise," Tessa replied, still holding Navar's hands, the resonance still connecting them on levels beyond the physical. The Blackwatch team retreated, leaving the lab in stunned silence. Moments later, the station's external communication screen activated, showing the face of First Emissary Valera, a female Cryosian with elaborate markings across her copper skin, her silver-white hair elaborately styled to denote her high rank. "Envoy Navar," she said, her tone formal but her expression relieved. "The Council received your emergency transmission. Your findings have altered our understanding of the situation." Navar finally released Tessa's hands, the resonance between them fading but not disappearing completely. A thread now connected them, subtle but unbreakable. He addressed the screen with the dignity of his diplomatic rank, despite his disheveled appearance. First Emissary, I am pleased to report that my unofficial mission has yielded unexpected insights. The humans of Research Station Epsilon have shown courage, ingenuity, and compassion that contradicts our previous assessments. So we observed, Valera replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. Your connection with Dr. Winters has been quite illuminating for our cultural specialists monitoring the situation. Tessa felt heat rise to her cheeks. You were watching us. Once we detected the resonance phenomenon, yes, Valera admitted. It is unprecedented in our records, a human and cryosian sharing such compatibility. Her expression softened. It changes everything, doesn't it? Director Vaughn stepped forward. First Emissary, I propose we use this opportunity to establish formal diplomatic relations between our outpost and your fleet. Perhaps we could arrange a proper meeting, without the drama of crashes and power failures. Valera inclined her head. A reasonable suggestion, Director. I will transport to your station within the hour. In the meantime, her eyes moved to Navar and Tessa, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. Perhaps our pioneers in interspecies relations would like a moment of privacy. The screen went dark, and gradually, the others filed out of the lab, leaving Tessa and Navar alone. The resonance crystals still glowed softly, casting gentle blue light across their faces. Your mission succeeded, then, Tessa said after a moment. You came to study humans, to see if we were as cold-hearted as your people believed. I found quite the opposite, Navar replied, his hand finding hers again. The resonance sparked instantly, gentler now but no less profound. I found warmth where I expected ice. Compassion where I expected calculation. Not all humans are like me, Tessa warned. Those Blackwatch operatives. And not all cryosians share the same perspective, he countered. But this, he raised their joined hands, the blue energy dancing between them, this changes the equation. It proves that our species are not just compatible, but potentially complementary. So what happens now? Tessa asked, suddenly aware of how close they stood, how the resonance seemed to pull them even closer. Now, Navar said, his free hand rising to gently trace the contour of her cheek, we become the bridge between our worlds. The resonance surged as their lips met, a kiss that crossed the boundaries of species, of worlds, of all preconceptions. In that moment, the heat of their connection transcended the physical, creating something entirely new, something neither of their civilizations had words to describe. 3 months later. The observation deck of Research Station Epsilon had been transformed. Where once there had been only utilitarian furniture and scientific equipment, now stood a space designed for diplomatic functions, a physical manifestation of the station's new role as the primary contact point between Earth and the Cryosian collective. Tessa adjusted the collar of her formal uniform, a hybrid of Earth diplomatic attire and Cryosian ceremonial elements, and gazed out at the frozen landscape of Polaris, 9. The perpetual storms had given way to a rare clear season, revealing the austere beauty of the ice planet's surface. Nervous? Navar asked, joining her at the viewport. His own attire reflected his elevated status, no longer just an envoy but the official ambassador to Earth from the Cryosian collective. A little, she admitted. It's not every day you become the co-director of the first joint human Cryosian research initiative. And the first officially recognized interspecies liaison, he added with a smile that had become familiar over the past months. Their relationship had caused quite the stir in both their cultures. Conservatives on both sides had protested, scientists had demanded studies, and politicians had maneuvered to use them as symbols for their own agendas. But the resonance between them had proven too significant to ignore, a biological and spiritual connection that hinted at deeper possibilities for both species. The Blackwatch division has been officially disbanded, Tessa said, changing the subject. At least publicly. Director Vaughn received confirmation this morning. And unofficially? She shrugged. There will always be those who see other species as resources rather than partners. But they no longer have institutional support, the resonance phenomenon is too valuable as a cooperative study. Navar took her hand, the familiar blue glow emanating from their joined fingers. Over time, they had learned to control and direct the resonance, using it not just for emotional connection but for practical applications, enhanced communication, shared perception, even healing. Scientists from both worlds were just beginning to understand its potential. The transport from Earth will be arriving soon, Tessa noted, checking the station's chronometer. The first wave of exchange students, 50 humans coming to study with the Cryosian mentors. And 50 Cryosian youth departing for Earth universities, Navar added. The beginning of true cultural exchange. Behind them, the observation deck doors slid open, and first emissary Valera entered, now a familiar presence at the station. She had become an unexpected ally, championing their relationship to the skeptical Cryosian Council. Ambassador, Dr. Winters, she greeted them formally, then relaxed into a smile. The medical team has finished analyzing the latest resonance data. They believe they've identified the specific neurological markers that enable the connection between you. Can it be replicated? Tessa asked, the scientist in her immediately curious. Not artificially, Valera replied. But approximately 1 in 50 humans and 1 in 30 Cryosians carry the potential for compatibility. With continued contact between our species. More bridges will form, Navar finished, squeezing Tessa's hand gently. The station's communication system chimed. Incoming transmission from Earth Central Command, announced Helm, the AI's voice now carrying subtle Cryosian inflections, another product of the ongoing integration. The main screen activated, showing the face of the Earth Coalition president. Ambassador Navar, Dr. Winters, she greeted them. I'm pleased to report that the Coalition Council has unanimously approved the Joint Species Accord. The Polaris 9 research station is now officially recognized as sovereign territory under dual governance. Tessa felt a surge of emotion, relief, pride, hope, flow through the resonance, shared instantly with Navar. After months of negotiation, their vision of a truly collaborative future was becoming reality. Thank you, Madam President, Navar replied formally. The Cryosian Council has likewise approved the accord. The first joint research teams are already forming. Excellent, the President said. And, personal exemption you requested has been granted as well. Your union will be recognized under both Earth and Cryosian law, the first of its kind. After the transmission ended, Tessa turned to Navar, a smile spreading across her face. Did you hear that? We're going to make history. We already have, he reminded her, drawing her close. The resonance between them pulsed with shared joy, visible to everyone present as a gentle blue glow that surrounded them like an aura. On the observation deck's main screen, the incoming Earth transport became visible against Polaris 9's white surface, bringing with it new minds, new possibilities, new connections waiting to be formed. Beyond it, the sleek shapes of Cryosian vessels hovered in perfect formation, no longer threatening but protective, partnered. They said humans were too cold-hearted, Navar murmured against Tessa's hair. Then you shared your blanket with me, and everything changed. And now we're sharing something much bigger, she replied, looking out at the stars visible above the planet's atmosphere, countless worlds, countless possibilities. The resonance flared between them, a reminder that sometimes the most profound connections begin with the simplest acts of warmth, and that even in the coldest places in the universe, the heat of connection can transform everything. As they stood together, human and Cryosian, scientist and diplomat, lovers and pioneers, the future unfolded before them, not as separate paths but as a single journey, bridging the space between their worlds with every shared heartbeat.